Welcome to yet another episode of Rendezvous with Anza Saqib on CxO Global. CxO Global Forum is a knowledge sharing platform for all C-levels across the globe. We take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy with our league of extraordinary thought leaders. Today as well, we've got a very extraordinary gentleman joining us all the way from the Middle East. Welcome to the show, sir, Mr. Mohammad Sear.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Pleasure is all mine. Now, for those of us who don't know, most of us know you as an international consultant for digital governance in the MENA region. But please tell us a little about your journey so far. So let's rewind back to the time when you went to school, college, perhaps, what courses you studied, what your work experiences were like, and how did you end up here?
Yeah, that's taking me back quite quite a way back. But just to make it simplified, maybe in a shorter journey, I actually was born in the UK, and I spent time growing up and spending time between three different, you can say, regions. One was the UK. I also spent a bit of time in Pakistan and the Middle East itself, where I am. I studied originally economics and statistics and mathematics, and that was kind of my direction I was thinking about. And I got into business administration. I started my career actually in the UK civil service, and I thought I was going to be a career servant for life and serving the public. And maybe that's where partially the bug for continually wanting to serve people through work I do with governments still exists. And I then, after about 12 years, having had the pleasure of working under three different premierships, starting with Margaret Thatcher, who we all know extremely well, then John Major and Tony Blair, I then moved to the private sector. And that's when I got into consulting. Originally, I joined a small boutique strategy house, and one thing or another led me to move to the Middle East. I moved here thinking I'm going to be here for about 2-3 years. That was in 2000, and now we are 22 years ahead, and I'm still here. Yes, in between I've been back to the UK, maybe to spend about a year or so. In between, I thought maybe I want to migrate and live in New Zealand, and which I did, and got there and decided it's too far away, it's cut off. It's a beautiful place to live, great people, but just too much disconnected from the rest of my own family, friends, and stuff. So I decided to then come back to the Middle East, and here I've lived in Dubai, in Kuwait, and to some extent in Saudi as well.
But what a fabulous journey, and needless to say, I am impressed. And it's heartwarming to see that someone who actually belongs to this part of the world has, gotten so much global exposure, yet manages to stay grounded. So hats off to you. Now, you've had an illustrious career, but you've also spent more than 7 years at EY, one of the big four companies. What does your role as a startup leader there entail?
So EY, I was actually a client of EY before I joined EY. So that was quite interesting, being a client and one day giving them a hard time and working with them, and the next day I'm actually working at the other side of the table, which brings some interesting, I would say, experiences and dimensions for me to keep in mind, because when I'm dealing with clients, I know what it's like when you're at the other side of the table. Your neck is on the line, and whoever you choose to work with you as a consulting firm, then you need to justify to your seniors that you made the right choice, and the work you got them to deliver resulted in the value that you're looking to get out of that particular consulting assignment. When startup is a new say, area for me to take on this role. I have been always been dabbling in this space because of the work I was doing on digital government and driving our digital government capabilities across the MENA region. And very, very rightly, you will always need to bring in the startups into the equation if you want to really disrupt a government working and you want to drive innovation. So that's been always there. And in EY, we had I would say, a disconnected number of different things happening across the region, which got connected into formalizing this. And we've been doing sport and activities on the startup side within Europe, with other places, and we decided to bring this all together into a formalized way of working with startups. So now that I have just taken on this role, it's going to be, I would say, two things. One is working with governments, advising them and helping them in thinking through how to leverage the power of startups to disrupt the way government operates, and also how to contribute towards the growth of their economy. Because as we all know, digital is the way forward, and everyone is talking about the digital economy. So there's a big, you can say, piece of strategy thinking, policy making, creating the right enabling environment that I will be working with governments and hoping to advise and help them navigate through this. The second part of it is where we as EY do a number of activities under our CSR program. So we have something called Ripples as our global CSR program. Under that, we do quite a few activities to support youth, and particularly on the women empowerment agenda, and also looking at sustainability. So I'm trying to look at these three things and seeing how we can bring some of the elements of successes we've had in other regions. For example, we have something called the EY Startup Academy, which has been operating in European markets for some time now. So that's one of the things I'm looking at, how to actually, under our CSR program, establish that as a program over here and start to support early startups.
That's brilliant. Sounds very impactful, especially the fact that you're trying to do this under the CSR umbrella. Just, I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but is Pakistan one of the markets that you're looking at for this program?
Yeah, so when I look at the whole of the MENA region, then that is definitely one of the countries, but it's, again, not easy to do all of the countries at the same time. So we are trying to see where to put the initial effort in the first stage, and then how do we roll it out later on. But it's definitely one of the countries that is on my radar, for sure.
Right. Now, it's you mentioned something interesting. We live in a world where it's not just physical anymore, but also digital, where, now the conversations are happening around Web 3.0, the metaverse. The world is changing at such a fast pace. Governance has also found new meaning. What is the significance of e-governance?
Yeah, look, first of all, I would say that we need to be thinking slightly different, because when we use the term we started e-governance or e-government years ago. And if I look in the evolution of having to administer a country, then we were in the physical form, we moved to E, and we kind of now in the digital form. And firstly, I think we need to stop, personally, this is my opinion, stop talking about technology terms to describe a process or something that exists or will exist, right? So administration or operating a country or administering a country as a capability will always need to be there. The question is more about how do you administer with different tools or different capabilities that are at your disposal at different stages in our evolution as a world. Years ago, was starting to happen, so electronic form of administering or providing services or connecting with the citizens was something that we started doing. We are now in the digital age, and I would like to think of the digital age more about operating model and business model changes than technology, because technology has always been there. So it's like now we're having this conversation, this would have happened in the physical form, right? The technology is enabling this change in business model, but what we're doing is a different way of communicating. So when I look at the time frame we're living in, what I would like to stop us talking about technology terms. So maybe smart is a better word to use, smart governance or smart government, because that will never die away, right? It always, whatever you have today at your disposal and you're using them properly means you are being smart. If new technologies like the metaverse comes, then we are obviously using that. It means we are being smart. And as we know, that is a direction that a lot of companies especially are exploring and seeing how the metaverse will have an effect on our lives. So that's one thing I want to make sure that we keep in mind, that it's more for me answering a bigger question, like how do I operate successfully? How do I administer, govern a country successfully in the age we're living in? And if it means we do that more to the social means that we have today, then that's the transition we need to make.
Right. So interestingly enough, I wrote a paper right now on the metaverse and the implications on administration and governance. So I'm just going to maybe take you in a sort of uncomfortable direction right now, but we know that what Web 3.0, or what the metaverse, what even crypto currency intends on doing is sort of decentralization of the internet, right? So a lot of, so we're millennials, so maybe we're not as, we're not digital natives as much as these new Gen Z people are, but the idea is that with the metaverse, there are going to be no rules, right? So anybody can lead any revolution. They can, talk about all sorts of things. They can maybe forge protests as well inside the metaverse. Do you think it's going to create havoc or maybe be a threat to governance? What do the actual, or maybe even become a sort of a threat to the sovereignty of a nation? Everything's happening.
Yeah, the one thing which we have discovered that the social, what we talk about social media, so social world or the online world doesn't respect boundaries, right? So geographic boundaries are no longer the barrier within which you are operating. So whilst it is really powerful that it breaks through those barriers, it also, in a way, democratizes technology to a point that anyone can start a business online. For example, the cost of doing business online is very different to doing a business in the physical world because of the restrictions and the cost involved with that. So, and also it is enabling anyone sitting in any part of the country to provide a service to someone at absolutely the other side of the universe. And that's where the power of the social space for me has come. And that's where the power of potentially metaverse will come as well. We are very at the early stages, and anything that is disruptive by its very nature is going to be uncomfortable. There are going to be some who are what we call early adopters. They're going to charge out there and they want to make it, and everything is about the metaverse, and it will become a fad. Maybe some will stick, some won't stick. Maybe it will become tangible. So it will bring a lot of challenges with it. But what we've seen even in the social media space is that after a complete freedom of anyone can do anything, anyone can become a journalist, anyone can become a newscaster, whatever. You can start your own channels. we are now moving to a point of where a lot of restrictions are coming, and we will see a lot more clamping down, and then we will see easing up, so that we will get to a nice medium where the consumers are protected and people will be able to still leverage the benefits of this. And I think that's the same thing for countries and governments. They will have to think about how much do they want to regulate this space in the beginning days, and how much do they want to leave it for innovation to take place. And then once it's matured enough and the volume is there, they start to think about what are the side effects that I need to manage. And one of the things which frankly can solve a lot of the problems of the metaverse or the online world is if it's identifiable who is the person putting the information out there. Identity, the problem that we see is that because identities are not known, people can take extreme views, or they can say whatever they want to say without any recourse. Whereas in the physical world, they know that they will get caught out. Someone will find them, and someone will put some restrictions on them, or they will have some consequences of spreading fake news or doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Yeah. So that's, I think there's an evolution which will come.
Yeah.
And we will go through this.
To regulation, and then absolutely. I think it's also a matter of keeping not just governments, but also the overall citizens and people secure. Now, having said that, we see there's a lot of buzz around cryptocurrency and the trade of it, therefore, also being a threat to the central banks of many, many different nations. And we see that different nations have taken very different stances on it. Obviously, on one hand, you don't want to defeat the purpose of the freedom that is allowed under such transactions, and obviously the removing middlemen, etc. But then on the other hand, it also opens up the avenues for a lot of gray trade, a lot of black money being smuggled between nations. How do you think we can regulate, or what are perhaps some of your policy regulations here?
Yeah, to be honest, this is such a specialized area, and it's something that I have till now not really got into in any deep way, because it has such a financial element to it, and it requires understanding the financial systems are much better than I do. But the one thing that I've always carried with me about this whole disruption that is taking place, that there is a problem of inefficiencies within the financial sector, due to which such opportunities grow. If there wasn't a issue of inefficiencies or ineffectiveness of the actual system, I know it works quite well. There's many things that we are able to benefit from, but there is a need for the whole financial system to be relooked, and maybe this is the opportunity. But I wouldn't want to comment too much on that more than that, because it's really a very specialized area, and it's not something that I have deep insight or knowledge about.
Right. So let's move on to two other areas which are going to obviously have a very big effect on digitalization: education and healthcare. Now, we know that the UAE tells a different story, but here in Pakistan, we see that there a lot of edtech startups have been founded here. There's a lot of success even in telehealth, telemedicine. However, we still live in a country where infrastructure and connectivity is a very big problem. And what do you think can be done in this regard?
Yeah, and this actually leads to an important point that I always make to countries who are embarking on a digital transformation. And you'll be surprised how many actually don't do this. And my advice is understand your population mix. if we were a private company, we would understand who our customers are and how can I serve my customers? How can I reach them? How can I serve them? And surprisingly, when governments are building their digital strategy, they don't even try to understand the mix of their population. So what percentage of your population is connected today? What population of has the ability, the financial strength to be able to be connected or access these things? Do they have the devices that can enable them to access? So you end up with a situation which is contributing a lot. So you must have heard the term digital divide. So you see a lot more problems being created because when you in isolation try to take your digital strategy forward or build a digital strategy without knowing who you're serving, then you end up with a digital strategy that is actually going to put a big proportion of the population at a disadvantage. So taking what I call a inclusion by design approach, so understanding who your customer base is or who your citizens are that you're looking to serve, your population mix, will enable you to put a strategy that will actually overcome those kind of things that you're just mentioning. So if you discover that 40% of your population doesn't have access, then one of the things your digital strategy should be doing at a national level is trying to solve the access problem. If you discover that, let's say 70% of your population is not digitally literate, then part of your strategy should be about uplifting the literacy, the digital literacy. So understanding who you're serving and what are the challenges is important before you say the only answer is going digital. Can I share a very interesting thing with you, which again comes a bit to the point you were raising? You know how many platforms in Pakistan itself are being built in the actual local language?
I think if I may just guess, maybe under 10%.
Right. So imagine you are saying you want to create, first of all, you want to create better service for your business community. And then you say you're going to build digital platforms that will provide services to them. So great, you are trying to solve for a problem and give them one window access to all business related services. But then you're going to create it in English. And maybe 70% of your population doesn't speak English. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that understanding these things is important, understanding whether they have access. So just barging in or rolling ahead and saying, I'm going to create everything digital is not the right answer.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more, because I have a very practical example to share here. One of the house help members, she got one of these Sehat cards, and then one of those other income support cards as well, which are known as the Asas cards. And I asked her, I said, have you been utilizing any of the funds? And she said, no. And the only reason was because this lady had never had any experience of using any kind of plastic money or using an ATM or a withdrawal. And maybe that's the kind of awareness, you're so right, needs to be also inculcated in the masses.
Absolutely. And let me give you another term that this is a term I came up with, which is digital silos. So what we are doing so successfully as governments, I'm not going to talk about the private sector, although there are some challenges there as well. But imagine what we are doing. We are saying that every government ministry is going to create a digital version of what they do. Then they're going to create some apps. And you've just given me an example, again, of one government giving one citizen, two different cards.
Yes.
Right? When we could have said, okay, this comes back to, are you going to take a true human-centered design approach towards building your strategies and your digital products especially? Because it's one citizen then you need to think about from the citizen's perspective, how do I serve the citizen in the most simplistic way? And I often use the example, imagine you're familiar with Amazon.
Yes.
The platform, okay. Now imagine Amazon was to break the platform into 50 pieces and say, if you wanted to buy mobile phones, you need to use this app or go to this platform. If you want to buy maybe some books, there's a different platform, different app for it. How would your experience be? Today, our experience with Amazon is great because it's a simple one platform, one way of doing business with an organization, right? And they orchestrate behind the scene all the different things. What do we do in government? Have we not created that problem? And we keep on creating more digital apps. A good example was through this COVID that we are living in today. So this takes it to even a bigger problem, which is more international of nature. Should I have to, as an individual, or you, have to download 10 different track and trace apps if you are one individual because you are going to 10 different countries? Shouldn't there be some kind of level of collaboration between countries to say, I will recognize your app, and it's just about data exchange, and that can be used. So we all went about building our own apps. So today when I travel, I have to have a Saudi app, I have to have a UAE app, I have to have a Jordan app. Yeah. So how are we making life more complicated? And through this kind of digital silos that we are creating is a problem. And just to finally mention about what you're saying about healthcare and education, all of these, it's important that we don't just look at building technology on top of it and say, okay, this is what we did. Now let's just make it a digital version of it. So we need to think differently about those things as well.
So moving on a little bit about accountability as well, because with governance, in a developing country like Pakistan, we've also seen that the work culture is changing now, especially post-COVID. So there's a lot of concept of work from home, flexible hours, etc. However, we have seen that it's not the case in the government sectors, right? So they're still working from the offices. There's still a lot of filing and paperwork being done. And what do you think are some of the recommendations for Pakistan in this regard? What do we need to do differently?
Not just for Pakistan, I would say any country that is really looking to embrace and leverage the power of the digital age need to take a step back and rethink and what I call reimagine. Rather than just saying, what we're doing today, let's just find a way of doing it digitally. We do need to think about what are the new operating models that have emerged or business models that have emerged because of the digital age. Private sector, and I'll use this as an example because governments at some point will have to adopt these models as well. The gig economy, where people are able to provide their services through digital marketplaces and not having to work full-time for any employer. This is going to continue to grow because it gives people the flexibility, the comfort for them to do what they want to do at the time they want to do it and the way they want to do it, get paid, and obviously have a different lifestyle they want to have. So are we embracing or trying to leverage that? The shared economy. Are we trying to leverage the power of the shared economy? If I look at even physical buildings, are we today thinking about buildings, government buildings, to be digital age ready buildings, that will support these kind of business models where you can work remotely, you can work physically, or you have a different hybrid model, which, and I would say many governments have explored that forcefully during COVID when we had no choice. It happened. But what happened post-COVID, or we're still not out of COVID fully, but we're out of the main crisis stage. What's happened since then? All of the governments who went 100% remote have gone back almost to 100% physical, right? So we have missed a great opportunity. So what we did was we managed it as a crisis and not learn the lessons. And what the crisis taught us was you don't need to be physically present to do work. You can be more productive, but it just requires different approaches and mindsets. So there's many things we can spend a lot of time talking about what could be done differently. But I would say that the bottom line is mindset shift. We need to start thinking in a way of what outcome am I trying to deliver and how can I deliver that outcome? And if it means it can be delivered better through a hybrid or 100% remote working model, then why not embrace it? Or if there's a new business model that is what we can use, let's use it.
Right. Now, moving on a little bit about your personal life. Now, what inspires you?
For me, actually, innovations that positively make an impact on people's lives. Things that actually will make a difference, positively make a difference in people's lives. That's what really inspires me. When I look at new business models, or I look at some solutions that, and especially from the government sector, the primary purpose of government is to serve the citizens. If we agree on that principle, then whatever governments are putting out there that is using technology to better serve, those kind of things really inspire me. I really love to see those kind of examples. Even from the private sector, there are some very interesting, innovative ideas that are emerging.
Right, absolutely. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received so far?
Yeah, quite a few, but the one which sticks the most with me, and this was something that my very early on career, someone shared with me, and I looked up to this person, and he saw me as a worrier. I was worrying about many things that, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. So he said, and I was having this discussion with him over coffee one day, and he said, you know what? The best thing you can do is focus your energies and your efforts on things that you personally have a control to change. Those that you haven't got any power of changing, every minute, every second you spend thinking about how can I do this is only going to bring concern to you, and it will make you, drag you down. So just focus on those things where you can make a positive change.
Very apt advice, indeed. So how would you define yourself in one word?
One word. Can I add another one to it? Because for me, it's about being purpose-driven. So having a clear purpose in life beyond your day-to-day, what you're doing. So why you exist as an individual beyond yourself, that purpose is very important.
That's great advice for those of you who are watching as well. Now, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure. It's been thrilling to just hear you speak and contribute to the knowledge economy. We're very honored, and we hope and pray that you keep, sharing all these insights with us in the future. But in the interest of time, we will have to wrap up here. But before closing, I would like to ask you, what do you think is the utility of forums like CxO Global?
I would say it's a great platform for collaboration. It enables a learning of a different kind. It enables exchange of views, ideas, networking. I think all of these things which we really need in our life, platforms like this help to take us to that next level, help us grow as individuals. That's what I would say.
Right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we will be able to have another conversation sometime soon again.
For sure, for sure. We look forward to it. And ladies and gentlemen, that'll be all for today. Please keep us updated with your comments and feedback, and you keep watching. That'll be all. I'm just going to be signing off.